Okay, I will call the meeting to order of Recode Rowlett Committee. And today is Tuesday, August 12th, 2025. Time is approximately 5:20 p.m., 5 o'clock on the wall. Be a little bit more formal tonight since we have a speaker. So I'll read the what's posted. As authorized by section 551.071 Texas Government Code, this meeting is convened to into closed executive session, except we're not. It may be, I'm sorry. For the purposes of seeking confidential legal advice from city attorney on any agenda item herein, City of Rowlett reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or allow the regular session or call the executive session or order of business at any time prior to the adjournment. As authorized by section 551.071 of Texas Governmental Code, this meeting is be convened. Well, that's the same thing written over. So we'll skip down to call to order. So the meeting is called to order. Citizens input. We have a lady that would like to address us this evening, citizens input. So it's your own.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that.
What should I say?
That you want to in front of TV, just stand start the screen.
On the screen. Is he calling it?
He did.
Oh,
So it's your floor is yours.
thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'm going to share with you.
Oh, and I was reminded. Please state your name and city of residence.
My name is Cindy Ling, and tonight I'm going to talk about pollinator-friendly code. Do you know that every 1 bite out of 3 bites of our food are because of bees pollination? And in the U.S., insect pollination contributes to $34 billion of U.S. economy. However, the bees are really disappearing really fast. What is the reason? Mainly it's because of the loss of habitat and also the use of chemicals like pesticide and insecticide. We remove their homes and we poison them with chemicals. However, Rowlett is going to change the story. It's going to reverse the trend because we are a proud BCD USA affiliate since 2021. Does everybody know that? Mm-hmm. Yes, quite a few people know that. So, what is our goal as a BCD USA affiliate? Basically, our goal is to help pollinators thrive. We want to help Rowlett to become a pollinator paradise so that we can build native pollinator habitats in our public spaces and in our home. So today, this is exactly what it says. I got a one-sheeter on there. So I really appreciate the city and our city council support our BCD pollinator initiative. Now, so native plants is the keys. Why native plants? People know about native plants here, except our council members, Michael Soup, Alessa, and Tamara. Other people knows about native plants. Why is it so important? Because native plants actually is our Texas natural heritage. It provides food and shelter for our pollinators. And it also helps create biodiversity, conserve water, and give us fresh air. So it is so important, and it is really, to me, it's really Texan, really American, but not too many people know about it. So here, on BCD USA map, we have now 2 pollinator garden, public pollinator garden. One of them is a koi house, which is pretty close to here, and another one at Shredded Group Park, which Alessa and Nathan are one of the pioneers helping us to establish that. And John your wife, Lady Corte, is one of the key person to help us with the courthouse pollinator garden. They're really beautiful. They are blooming with beautiful flowers and beaming with buzzing with pollinators right now. Has anyone visited the courthouse pollinator garden yet? If not, you should go there and take a look. And it's so beautiful. So, and also our other goal is to get whole Rowlett to fill up with all the habitat. Because of the loss of habitat, the bees cannot survive. That means no bees, no food, right? No pollinators, no food. So we encourage everyone to have a pollinator garden in their home and in their yard. But over the last 2-3 years, we have over like 40 homes that we know of have pollinator gardens where they have a bees sign on there. This is where the private home, including John's home. We've got a beautiful pollinator garden. And
Can't come compliance, so this is all time because of it.
My bees, thank you.
What's that?
So,
My bees, thank you.
so I am going to pass around this map and pass around this sign-in sheet here. If you have a pollinator garden in your home, the definition is that if you have native plants that attract bees and butterflies, please put a sticker on this map and write down your name, put a big B next to your name. But if you want, you don't have one, but if you want one, and I see more than 20 people here, they want a pollinator garden, put a purple dot and put a star on your name. And if you think that there is a space in our city that needs a yellow dot, a public pollinator places, like Nathan and Lester think that we need to have a blackleg puree, pocket puree at the Shredded Blue Button Park, right?
Yes.
So you can put one there, and we see that there's 15 spaces that people think that we should put it there. So I'm going to pass it around and start. John, you know pollinator garden in your home?
I don't know what native, but I'm sure we have native plants, but.
Yes.
I have no
And
idea.
so basically, let's work together, and this is the chance, and I think that this team can make a huge difference for our community and to really come up with pollinator-friendly landscape code for our city so that our cities and our residents can know about and started to build a pollinator-friendly landscape. So I've been studying and a lot of this code from a lot of cities and also some of the environmental organizations that have been, codes that write by the attorney. So let's do that because we want to see Rowlett to be the leader in sustainability, continue our tradition of this bee city that impacts
Violations.
our city so that we can protect our food security and our biodiversity and boost our economy and enhance the beauty and health of our community for many generations to come. Thank you, everybody. So let me know who wants to reach out to us. I don't know who, but we look forward to work with you. We mean that me and some other members will keep Rowlett beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Citizens, anybody? If not, we'll go to the consent agenda. Thank you. And consider approving the minutes of July 22, 2025. Did everybody get the minutes and have a chance to read them? Does anybody have any comments or motion on acceptance of the minutes as printed?
Thank you so much.
I make the motion that we accept the minutes of the July 22nd, 2025 meeting as presented.
I'll second.
Okay.
There's a motion made and a second to approve the minutes as printed. All those in favor, raise your hands. All those opposed? Seeing none, the minutes will be accepted. Before we get into turning this over to Mr. Hull, I visited with Mr. Hull on the phone yesterday, and as we're about to embark on the commercial side, I'm going to take the liberty to make a comment up front. I'm sure everybody has seen or knows of Bayside. And we know it as Sapphire Bay, renamed, on the south side of Interstate 30 down to Delaware. I had the privilege to be on the comprehensive plan back in 2018-19. We discussed the North Shore, which is the biggest area in town that is not built, has been set aside for commercial development. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I hope that we as a city, the citizens, have learned a lesson from Bayside / Sapphire Bay, that beautiful pictures, when somebody wants to come in and talk to us about and sell the city on, may not happen. And when this project was started, the city, to my knowledge, somebody can correct me if I'm incorrect, did not require any of the commercial to come in first, nor did they require that the commercial come in at all in a percentage to what of residential that was built on the north side and on the south side. What I personally, as a member of this committee, I don't have any more votes than you guys do individually. But what I would like to see is when we approach any of the potential codes that has a couple commercial component and residential component, that we put in to the code that either the commercial has to be built first, or a percentage of the commercial has to be done first before the residential starts. And so we don't get hoodwinked.
Or concurrently.
I'm not sure I want to see it concurrently. I would rather see commercial be first and a percentage of it, so that the developer has so much money in the commercial, they can't afford to just stop and go with the residential and stop with the commercial. So I want to bring that up on the beginning before we get into that discussion, so you can think about it. One of the other things, and I did not have time to reproduce this and send it to the city to send out to everybody, but there's a couple of articles I think it's important to read. One about D.R. Horton's lawsuit with Rockwall County in regards to what they want to do and the roadways out at Clinton Chisholm. There is another one that just came up 2 weeks ago, and that is the Hoffines group wants to also build in Clinton Chisholm and what they're looking at doing. So I would urge you to look those up. Now, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah,
Yes.
Chairman, I think, while I appreciate your comments about Sapphire Bay and the miss, I think it's probably like an airplane crash. There's more than one reason. There's a multitude of reasons that occur. I also think, and having leased over 2 million square feet for my company, it's important that we think like commercial people, and that we think about what they want, and what shovel ready, and all those definitions that make it attractive to bring commercial development. Quite frankly, our tax base is 99.999 residential. We need to increase, that's not a correct figure, by the way, but we need to increase our commercial. And we need to think like commercial when we discuss these zoning issues. So
I would agree with you, but at the same time, we need to protect ourselves in the code so that we don't see a repeat of Sapphire Bay. Anybody else? Without hearing none, then Mr. Hall, it's yours.
Thank you. Just let me share with you, kind of based on my experience working in planning and development. And Mr. Chair, you bring up valid points as it relates to making sure certain thresholds are met, particularly when you're looking at different types of land uses. I would suggest, and I think to a degree, with there's been a lot of discussion I know that's been had related to Sapphire Bay. But I would suspect that those terms and conditions are codified in a development agreement. Typically, we get that information and we achieve kind of those thresholds. But to the point you're making, as we undertake this zoning activity, and as you will see as a part of when we get into the later portion, what staff wanted to do was to help set a baseline in terms of looking at the city in totality and looking at where these non-residential zoning districts are. And that can then lead us into a discussion as we do a deep dive into each and every one of these zoning districts that exist today and that are to come. So I appreciate those comments. In the vein of Mr. Bauer, if he was giving his presentation, I just want to start by reminding everybody of the meeting objectives, right? So we have these two competing zoning ordinances, Rowlett Development Code, Form-Based Code. We have experienced a great deal of issues, many of our development community. There have been some activities that have been permitted by right, particularly in the Form-Based Code. And so this opportunity that we have today and for the next 2 to 3 months is to really look at, how we can bring together both ordinances that will speak to what currently exists and what is to come as it relates to City of Rowlett. And together with, the guidance of staff, with the input of Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council, hopefully we can achieve the right type of development that's going to catapult our city into the next generations that are coming. So tonight we're going to specifically discuss the most intense residential zoning district, RH, residential high intensity, or as I say, residential intensity. We're leaving out the word density. So looking at some numbers specific to that, some characteristics, and then we'll take some feedback. And then just, Mr. Pollard, to your point, just as an intro to today, we'll look at specifically, before we get in the details of our non-residential districts, we'll look at generally where and how these districts exist today in their raw form. And then we might be sending out some homework over the next week in preparation for our next meeting for Recode. So if we're ready to start, I'm gonna go through where we left off. Kind of like to keep it almost there. Like to keep the running presentation. Okay. So before we begin, we do have extra copies of our breakdown of high-rise, RH residential high-rise. And so if anyone needs this, just let us know.
Yeah, I'll take one of those.
And purpose statement talks about the intent of this is to provide the most intense residential housing type that uniquely creates density in urban areas that are distinct from lower density residential developments. Establishes to accommodate high density residential development primarily in the form of multi-story apartments and condominiums, often located in urban centers and near transportation corridors, or as part of a mixed-use development. So to the point that Mr. Pollard was making, and what you'll see for illustration purposes of tonight's meeting, we've taken the proposed buildings from Sapphire Bay to use for illustration purposes only, but the level of intensity that we're talking about. But, specifically, the district aims to provide a diverse range of housing options to meet the need of a growing population, maximize the efficient use of urban land and infrastructure, promote walkable communities by concentrating residential density, allow for the creation of a distinct urban skyline element. That's a key function of this residential zoning district. And then, of course, without compromising the essential qualities of life, making sure that you have adequate light, air, open space for residents and the surrounding community. And then some complementary accessory uses are retail, office. We oftentimes see hotel. Some of these elements are being built, in fact, in Sapphire Bay. So, one of the things that I think that is really critical to this particular zoning district is the opportunity to create a distinctive urban skyline. So when we look at, other areas that have this zoning district, we notice that these are some of the tallest buildings outside of your central business district if you're looking at a large city. They are the pinnacle of what dominates the skyline. I mean, I jokingly say, even as I'm driving along 75 going toward Richardson, I'm like, well, look at some of these tall buildings, right? But certainly in places like downtown, but even in exurbs, as we call them, exurbs, we're seeing kind of a central downtown area in a conglomeration of these higher buildings. And so, critical to this is the availability of infrastructure, transit corridors, and then these supportive services. So, here it is. This is what Mr. Pollard was talking about. This is one of the images that we associated with the then Sapphire Bay concept. So, a high-rise development. There was elements of some ground floor retail, but it provides for a diverse range of housing types. So you would imagine in a development project like this, you would have everything from,
Studio.
thank you. It lost my mind. Studio apartments all the way to 2, 3, and possibly even 4-bedroom apartments. And so this diverse range of housing types, in this case, this would be, high-end residential, maximizing efficiency of urban land and infrastructure. These are also, I will note, these are also marked with high-end amenities, right? So movie theaters, resort-style swimming pools, and the like. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that really actually confused me whenever you had their diverse range of housing types. Because when I think of that, I think, okay, casitas, single story, 2 stories, but versus the diverse range of unit sizes.
That could be it, but in terms of diverse housing types, it could be something similar. So we've seen developments where, as a part of the overall development, there could be a mix. When we go out to what is Sapphire Bay now, we know that they have some individual single-family townhomes, albeit they're close. But when you look at the entire development, it is this mix of different kind of housing types. But in a single development, to your point, yes, different sizes of units.
So not just this building, but the surrounding area.
Correct.
Very much like State Farm.
Yes.
You're also seeing in downtown Dallas, that very property being hotel,
Yes.
commercial,
Right.
and residential,
Residential.
all in the same building.
Yes.
What once was 2 million square foot, single office tenant bank is now multi-purpose, so
Yes.
that mixed use now includes hotel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Many of the, I was looking kind of at the phenomenon of Ritz-Carlton, and many of their new models now is they're building the hotel component
Residents.
and some commercial, and then the residential were there. They are selling those units in excess of millions of dollars. So, promote walkable communities, so, taking advantage of the landscape, and the instance of Sapphire Bay, the presence of being right there on the shoreline of Lake Ray Hubbard. So it presents itself as a walkable community. And then, this stands, this is unique in that these are some of the tallest buildings that we will probably see in our city. And so it defines what the skyline is going to be, for the city of Rowlett moving forward. Just some other illustrations
Can
from.
I ask a quick, and I don't
Yes.
want to get too much into the
Sure.
weeds, but, so we have Sapphire Bay, we have these type of structures
Yes.
going there, they're appropriate for that site, whether you like them or not, but they're appropriate for the site.
Correct.
Outside, we've got North Shore, but North Shore is really, it will have a component of housing, but it's primarily an economic engine, I think, what we're looking for, some type of commercial base there. Outside of that, do we even have a footprint that would even, the reason, I guess why I'm going there is how deep in the weeds do we want to get here when the reality is we couldn't build one if we wanted to, because we really don't have a place to put one.
However, you want to have that tool in your toolbox.
Yeah, that's
Sure need
good
it.
point, good point.
Right.
I'm just,
So not very far deep, but right.
yeah,
And as we always say, with any applicant that is inquiring about a zone change, this will be one of the zoning districts that they could consider. And I can, there could potentially be an argument that, we've talked about the presence of yard, we've talked about some opportunities to maximize development in and around the station. There are some underutilized parcels in and around that area. If we reimagine maybe some of the traditional industrial uses, is there another line, right? And so, we could very well see if an application comes in, change of zone, a parcel or two. But part of what our task is, as we look at, the intent, which is really going to drive where we envision this, coupled with the comprehensive plan, where do we envision this to be? I mean, we need to have it somewhere. We currently have it right now in Sapphire Bay. Where possibly could this exist if there was another location?
North Shore.
So, as I know North Shore right now, in addition to
All state.
and maybe, and like John maybe repeat, or you repeat, because I know people are watching this, and there's a lot, we're going through this code process here, and just what, we're building the toolbox. We're not saying we're building high rise, and so
Correct.
would you please, you say clearly to everyone,
Yes.
this is strictly part of the process we're going through so that we are building our toolbox. Nobody is suggesting we're building a 40-story high-rise by the DART station,
Absolutely.
okay?
So,
Are you clear on that?
Councilmember, that's a very good point, and I think it's worth repeating again. So the idea behind identifying these zoning districts is looking at, the array and possibilities of what can happen. Right now, our designation for this happens to be in one single area, and that is, it's been approved, and that's for the Sapphire Bay project, right?
Which
Go
is
ahead.
another reason to have the tool in the toolbox.
Correct.
Is so that we can assign it to what we do have.
Right.
Not be non-conforming.
Right. But with every zoning case, there's always the appropriateness of the placement of buildings and the zoning district, right? So we know that this is not gonna pair well, or if at all, in areas that are primarily single family, right? It's just, that is not a comparison, that is not the type of, activity that we would even consider because of the incompatibility of different types of uses. But for, conversations and looking at kind of what the requirements are, understanding where this could exist, and defining what the specific development standards are related to what this type of project is. So, if there aren't any other questions, let's get into our little handout for those who haven't. We kind of look at kind of some of the dimensional standards, the residential intensity, get the word density, the setbacks, the building standards. One of the reasons why, and it's indicated here, one of the reasons why this is often done in either a PD or this is done in the SUP is because it gives the flexibility of the decision makers to make sure that they take into account the surrounding environments and the potential issues that may arise at such a very high intensity use, high intense use. And so if you notice here, it says established by SUP, special use permit. And that is because the uniqueness of this type of development requires the rigors of everyone coming to the table, outside the developer, including the community, but certainly the policymakers in helping to make that decision. So, typically, when you're looking at minimum lot width, minimum lot depth, you're going up. This isn't, a sprawling, subdivision where you need 25, 30 acres. These types of developments can have a smaller footprint because primarily they're vertical. Any thoughts on kind of these standards that we have for residential high-rise?
The only question I have is on max building height. So there's no max, it's just the max is only within 15 foot of the lot line, correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Currently, yes. Yeah. But in terms of our consideration, we can kind of, if that's a consideration of
Is
the.
that even a viable comment? Because
It is, because it creates a stair step.
but your built-in zone is 0 to 20, so,
Right.
I say 20 feet.
It keeps you from being right next to a 3-story townhome,
Right.
you have an 84 building right next to you, 80-foot building next to it.
Is there any restrictions or requirements on parking?
There can be, there should be, particularly since this isn't an area that it has great access to roadway, but there's no transit access.
It's probably in the development standard, not in the zoning. So then, and that's what's hard, is in this process, we've looked at zoning separate from development standards. And so the question is, do you have the tool in your toolbox, and then how are you going to apply it, and what guardrails are you going to put on that tool? And that may be a guardrail you put on this as a parking requirement.
I would think so. I mean, if you ever tried to lease space in Austin, for instance, you can find, office space. There's no parking. So what do you do with your employees?
I have my Austin joke. That's if you can get off of 35, right? Half the time you're taking all the
That is the parking lot, right?
That is. But no, to your point, you're absolutely right. And what we have to account for are the point you made, residential size is critical. The other types of uses that may draw additional people, we know that there are going to be some retail establishments there at Sapphire Bay. They're under construction right now. There are other types of uses, hotel uses. And so, if the hotels have conference space, there's going to be a need to have, in addition to accommodating the residents, maybe people who are coming to meetings. And so when you consider all of these kind of competing interests, is there sufficient parking? At the same time, if I put on my economic development hat, I want to make sure that we're maximizing the potential of sales tax revenue. This is going to be potentially, on the commercial side, a high generator of revenue for the city. And so, making sure that we figured out the balance between a walkable community, a community of convenience, because I want to be able to easily park my vehicle, get out and go to where I'm going, that could, the luxury of being able to spend a limited amount of money that we see in Highland Park and, in other places, and
We don't have to look far, we can look at the harbor.
Yes.
Rockville land as a failed parking. And so they didn't account for that.
right.
And it's still, the retail has suffered. And you know, most of the projects are because they didn't build. And so you as a patron have to figure it out. Which I think we should put some guardrails as you suggest.
And just, you know, you always have to visit the competition, going over to, is it Harbortown? Harbor Place? Harbor. You know, there are major tenants there, Hilton, and then there's this big AMC theater, right? And so they would typically generate a lot of parking, but to your point, you know, sometimes depending upon what's going on and the activities that are going on, it's hard to find parking. And I don't mind walking, but there are people who do like, they want to park right in front of the establishment. So then what do you do? So it's a delicate balance. I don't think it's one that anyone has ever figured out, where you're penciling in, you know, how much parking do I need versus making sure that I can maximize the highest and best use of the greatest development potential for this area. And, you know, I take pride, you all take pride. You know, we have something that many communities in Dallas-Fort Worth do not have. And that is, and I remember my interview with Christoph and David so aptly reminded me, we have more shoreline than any other city in DFW. And I'm like, exactly. And let's maximize that to our potential, right? Let's maximize that. So, you know, I can share with you my experiences when I worked for the city of Detroit. We have the Renson, you know, hotel right there, 70 stories. Well, guess what they put on the Detroit River? Directly across from Canada. Parking. So no retail at the bottom. I mean, I could, you know, possibly accept, you know, some parking along with some ground floor retail, but it was just all parking. So why would you give your most prime real estate to something that doesn't breathe, doesn't have a heartbeat, and can't naturally enjoy the natural settings of an international waterway? Never figured it out, right? And so now, since I've left, they have now developed that into a walkable trail. And it's a connected trail along the entire river. So it's the appropriateness of how we look at land use, while at the same time meeting the expectations of, you know, the residents that are going to be here, the business owners that are going to be here, and the general, you know, community that's going to come out and visit.
Can I jump in with some
Sure.
feedback on this high rise?
Okay.
So my thoughts in looking at this, from a city side, you want this tool in your toolbox, because if you don't have a high rise element, the only thing a developer has is a PD. And when you get a PD, everything's on the table.
Yeah.
All of your other development standards are on the table. Correct. But if you have a zoning code that they can apply for, there's a set of design standards that already apply to this zoning code. And so they can apply for this specific zone, and they know what the standards are. And you can establish all of the setbacks and the density by SUP. So you're still bringing them to the table, but you're not negotiating sidewalks and open space and parking and amenities they're gonna bring. All of those are required by your zoning code.
Unless, of course, you want to write a PD with the basis of this and the following variances.
Which can still happen, but if you have an SUP,
Right.
you're already open to that, because you're saying, we'll allow this, but you need to come and have the discussion for this to be commensurate for everybody. The issue I see here is that there's no base zoning density. And so we've delivered a density per units per acre in every other zoning code. So as a developer, why am I gonna go spend 6 figures on due diligence when I don't know if I can develop 30 units an acre, 50 units an acre, or 100 units an acre? So you need something that's a baseline where they say, I can make this work at 50 units an acre, but I'd like to be at 72 units to an acre. So I'm gonna go through the SUP process, and I'll add inside parking, and I'll add a porte cochere so that I can have a build-to zone at 0 feet on either side. So there's allowances that can happen, but you need to give them something to start with.
Great point. Any other thoughts?
When you mention that, is there any benchmarking that you can point to, for instance?
You know, they're all different. If we look at what we did in the last one, the multifamily district, we did an intensity of 50 units per acre. So I would at least start there.
And that was a maximum, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you start at a maximum of 50 units per acre and then more by SCP.
But if you're going up, don't you in fact inherently have more than 50?
Well, no, because your density is based on your acre feet. So I mean, if you have 1 acre, you have 43,560 square feet of land. And so you can only put 50 dwelling units on that acre. And that would be 50 floors, and you could have 1 on each floor, or you could have 4 on each floor and have, 12 floors.
Right.
So it depends on how the building is designed.
Okay.
Got any things to think about?
So,
I'm just sitting here thinking, you mean to tell me each floor doesn't constitute its own acreage?
well, but so
Developers would love that if you could keep going up.
Yeah.
All right, see if I understand this, because I probably don't. So let's say we're at the density 50 units 50 per acre, right? And so if we're looking at it just because the math is easy, a 10-story building, right? We have 500 units potentially, or
No.
not. That's not correct.
You have 50 units.
You have 50
You have
units.
50 units total.
Oh, okay,
And so if you want a 10-floor building, you have 5 units per floor.
okay.
What's a floor of like 25,000?
They all vary. I mean, just do the square root. I turn my calculator sideways to do that.
Are there existing code standards that are considered, I don't know, whatever, standards, because, that you're aware of? I mean, is the 50, is that the number? I mean, I just, if we're gonna put a number to it, I'd like to have the feeling that maybe we've got a,
Well, your number would probably be closer to 100 if you want to put a even number to it. Right. Because you've already got a 50.
Well, I think his idea was to minimum 50, but more with SUV. Then the council and P&Z would have to then approve the SUV.
is that what we're talking about?
Right. So essentially then, you're saying we're comfortable with, on a 1 acre site, a 10-story building that would have 5 units per floor. And then you've got to figure out parking. So you end up doing a 14-story building with 4 units of parking. But you could also ask staff or your consultant to look at this and figure out what is the high-rise density or multifamily density that's utilized in other cities that are on a lake. You can look at Flower Mound, Louisville, Rockwall, Grapevine, and see what they've utilized. And use that as a baseline, because those have all developed well and they have the same amenity that you have.
That's the benchmarking I like to hear about.
So, a question that I have to the committee, do you want to put a floor limit, height limit, or just how many units per level?
I think if you have a density figure in there, that's pretty much going to be able to drive,
Right.
what their floor height, or how many levels are going to go in order to maximize. They're not going to go any higher than they have to. I mean,
It's so expensive to go
yeah,
higher.
it's expensive.
So you're not going to drive height just because you can drive height.
Right.
And I don't think you want to get into the minutia of no more than 6 units per floor. And
Yeah.
you end up with a unique site. Let's say they redevelop a commercial site that's adjacent to the lake that's 800 or 1,000 feet long, but it's only 80 feet deep. And so you have a 2-acre site that really could be great, and you end up with 15 units on a floor because everybody's in view of the lake. And now you're back in the land of a PE because it doesn't fit with what you designed in your development standard.
If I'm not mistaken, in Sapphire Bay, for instance, there was 2 towers, 20 stories. That was in there. One of the towers was to be condos, and one was to be apartments.
Do you know the footprint size? You're back into the density.
No,
I bet we could
I
pull
just
the
know
old
that
PE.
that was in the
There's gonna
past,
be a
that was
bubble back there.
discussed. That was in the very original documents. So we
Towers at Sapphire Bay 1 and 2, phase 1, phase 2, says down there.
Yeah, would be,
They're now surrounded by homes.
Right. That was going to be a point that I was gonna make, is, you know, if we think for just a moment about the current status of Sapphire Bay, there's the construction of single-family homes. So to the point that was made a couple of meetings ago, and having individuals to look down, this situation has now been created for any type of new high-rise that's gonna go there.
now the other,
That you're gonna get
the other thing is, and I'll go back to the comp plan, and our discussion of the comp plan. We talked about the North Shore. We wanted in a business center. One of the big discussions that was had was, well, if you're gonna go office buildings and not put a residential component in there or allow a component, what happens when you have somebody like State Farm? The comment that I made, of course, this is something we're trying to correct now, was I think any P and Z or city council would be crazy if somebody came in with City Place too, if you would, and wanted to build, somebody that's gonna employ 3,000 to 5,000 people and have an apartment component, they'd be crazy to turn it down. Now, I'm not for apartments. I'm not for a lot of multifamily. But I would agree, if I was on council or P and Z at that time, that if they came in with a City Place too and wanted to offer those kind of jobs and employment up to 3,000 to 5,000 people like State Farm did in 3 different buildings. I worked my tail off to work with them to have a component for apartments.
Well, I don't think that, this is not going to exclude you being able to fill those residential units as apartments.
Well, I understand, but where I'm going with this is, what we do with this component will be awful hard not to translate to, in the commercial thing, of what we were talking about, if you're talking about how many in a high rise, because that's exactly what they've got over in Richardson, is high rises.
Anything like that that's a corporate campus or a multi-use is gonna be designed in a PD. It doesn't matter how much we work on these zoning codes, you won't use them. It'll be a pure PD, because there's gonna be financial incentives involved, reimbursement agreements involved, 3A agreements, it becomes far more complicated. So I think what you wanna look at is, it is. What you wanna look at is, if we have a 5-acre site that shows up somewhere and somebody wants to put a tall building, a high rise there, does it make sense? And you have a base zoning code that they can use, just a one-off project.
So the question really is, do we want to go ahead and approve what was presented with the caveat that we get a density guideline?
I think you
Or
have
have staff go ahead and recommend it. Well, yeah, but we can approve what's here with the idea that we're gonna also be able to then find what that density requirement will be to allow it.
Well, I think you need that for parking. Parking's gotta go with it.
I think parking's in your design standards, right?
But you're gonna have to know how many spaces, so the developer will know.
Yeah.
Do I have to do surface, or do I have to go up in the depth?
Again, that's the building standards, not necessarily,
It's not in zoning. Right.
But yeah, I can tell you, just from a design perspective, anything that's gonna be built to this magnitude is gonna have multi-level parking. I mean, we do have limitations in terms of, if we're looking at Sapphire Bay, how much land is out for development, so. It wouldn't be feasible to not consider a multi-level parking to accommodate these kinds of developments. But your point is very valid in that if we think back through our exercise of looking at these zoning districts, and when we're continuing stepping these up, this would be a natural step up, a minimum of 50 units per acre to whatever ultimate design is gonna be from that development. So we would then be able to classify each of our residential districts, separating aside, separating for a moment any commercial elements that may be involved. But if we're just looking at it strictly as a residential project, we would have the appropriate steps.
Right.
And to categorize any application that's coming in and/or any existing residential development.
Well, it would allow you to go back and capture parts of Sapphire Bay. So once it's built out, the PD has run its course, the pit is done and reversed, you now can overlay this high rise on those existing buildings that are done in 30 years. And you're not having to go back and reference an old PD to try and determine how it's administered. So Google thinks that high rise density is typically 140 to 320 units per acre. So
Dallas does 160
Dallas does 160.
for an F4A for the high rise.
But the mid-rise is probably greater than what we have proposed in that R5 district.
Mid-rise is 116 to 150, so it's under Dallas's M4.
Mid-rise is 6 stories.
Yeah. So I'm way off on 50, but I do think you need to come up with a base density that you're willing to allow based on some of these best practice.
And I looked at Rockwell, and Rockwell's doing PDs, like
Right.
what's in a PD and all that, so there's nothing to look at Rockwell.
150.
So,
That's what I was right there.
so, it's not far off, Dallas is 160, so. And, I mean, they can always ask for an adjustment. And then maximum building height is limited to 240 feet, I don't know what that equals out to. Roughly.
24 to.
Feet roughly. Yeah, you're missing, so I guess crawl space. So it's
20 to
18
22.
stories, 20 stories. What'd you say?
Yeah, 20 to 22 max.
20.
Building height is limited to 240 feet. Density is capped at 160 dwelling units per net.
So maybe that's where you start, is here's what we're willing to offer in this, and then you can increase with an SUV.
Within,
But what you don't want to do is what Rockwell's doing with a bunch of
which
PDs.
one?
It's a mess to try and keep
You
up.
want some kind of base.
Yeah, I mean, it's a defensible number, I mean, that's what I'm looking at, is that a defensible number, does it make sense, can you point, look, you know,
80% lot
major
coverage
metro
or
here, that's
something.
what they're doing.
That's what Dallas is using.
Yeah.
The parking component on it.
It's gonna be in their development standard.
No, there's no,
Okay.
on that,
Because you want
side
an
of your
entire
setbacks
parking
vary depending on adjacent
It
zoning.
addresses all of the zoning codes and you maintain
Good,
them.
because
So
they'll,
that
they'll,
there's parking.
what makes
Here's what you
There
need.
can be additional setbacks for smaller structures, so it just, then it starts going to the development standards. We can look at that when we get there. The maximum floor area ratio is 4.0.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, see what text notes.
I think that's a good starting point to at least use Dallas,
Yeah.
because that's in 4.
M4, M4, that's the multifamily 4A. It's for the high-rise multifamily. So it's specific. So it's comparable. For sure.
what's our fire department's ability to fight? More access. That might, I mean, that would probably be the,
So without having them here, but kind of
I don't see too
having
many
worked
ladder
for them,
trucks.
these types of units
It's not
obviously
spring.
are gonna be, they're gonna require sprinklers, they're gonna
Well-
require elevators, they're gonna require access to, nearby fire stations.
Yeah, but that fire that breaks out on the sixth
Well, I
floor,
went,
trapping everybody on the seventh.
I went through the fire, I went through the Citizens Fire Academy. And truck 5 that has their little, would be like a compact ladder,
Compact.
that ladder go up 75 feet.
Yeah, which is a little shy of 200.
A little shot, that maybe a little low to their liking, but if you do a,
But it gets you into the structure.
Right.
So Jonathan, what is the plans for the fire truck to go in and set fire there?
The fire station, I don't know what the plans are for that. Do you know what?
I'm sorry.
Chris,
Except for
up to
those, fire
Yeah,
station.
so we'll have a ladder truck, no, not a huge ladder truck, but a ladder truck. They call it Quint, I believe, which is something, but again, these are sprinkled buildings.
Right.
So you're not expected to have a ladder.
Well, and in Dallas, they don't have ladders that can What's the other city that has
But you're not gonna start forcing water through the building. And that's what they do, is they run a 4 or 6 inch dry pipe system through the building.
Right.
And so they're putting 1,500 gallons of water per minute at fire flow for 2 hours through the building. And that's draining acre feet of water into the building. So you're getting a ton of water coming in, and that's what's required. And you have fire flow at all your hydrants. So all the truck is doing is hooking up to a hydrant or 2, and then pumping it through and forcing it into the building.
Very interesting.
and then, well, they would also garland back them up with whatever. Maybe they have a hard.
But I think that gets into the development standards. So the question is, do you want the zoning code, and then do you want to use something that's comparable in another city as your baseline?
I like comps just personally, it was, like I said, it becomes defensible. Rather than just pulling numbers out of the air unless you're just,
And it directly correlates with multifamily high risk. And then it's-
So you mentioned Louisville, who else?
Grapevine, Farm out of Rockwall, because they've all done recent high-rise projects.
So
Rockaway doesn't count.
before we move forward, can we get that data and look at those things up?
Trying to think of who else is comparable.
It's favorite city. Los Colinas has a couple.
Los Angeles would.
Yeah, on Lake Carrollton.
Yeah, that's right. Or along the canal.
In fact, that looks like a Las Colinas building.
Exactly.
Minus the ocean.
Right.
Yeah, the canal, like that.
It's a bay.
Yeah.
So what we could do to make sure that we stay on our timeline, this will be part of our homework, so we can pull this information probably this week, send it out early next week with some additional details on the next set of non-residential zone districts. That's good. And then when we reconvene in 2 weeks, we can just kind of quickly go through it.
I think a table would be great, just to list the city, the density, maximum height. We can just reference all of them and go across. It's easier.
If you're gonna do that, just put an average column there too.
All I was gonna
No,
drop
let's
into
go
Excel.
Let's do the square root calculation.
I agree. All right, so I think that'll work. And we'll continue this one. We'll send out information on these in a table. We'll also include a reference to what they have for parking,
yeah.
since that seems to be a big issue. So that'll be great. What about, in the instance, because most of these buildings are not just going to be singularly residential, we're looking at a residential high-rise zoning district. Are you interested in the mix of their commercial activity, any type of retail?
Are you-
I think that'd
Are
be
you-
interesting to see.
Are you proposing that we have a minimum percentage?
No, but I know that some of the ones that we're gonna review, they're gonna probably have that baked in to ensure that those potential residents have access to services right at their computer. So these are gonna be, you know, high-income individuals, and high-income individuals will require certain types of services at their doorstep. So we can just add that in our table to see if there are any minimum yeah, amenities, additional retail space, commercial space.
Does that make it too tight though? Because a developer is going to want to sell their units, and so they're going to know what their market wants.
Yep.
One would presume. So does that make it too tight for a developer to, if there's a code to say you have to have this amount,
Oh.
and, or could they still do changes in an SUP and?
The question is whether you allow it in an
Yeah.
SUP.
Right.
The SUP
So-
becomes your negotiation.
So you still have, okay, so we still have the
Right.
ability to change that.
Exactly.
So it just gives them the base.
Because you may find a site that's on the lake that's next to all residential and you don't want to have a coffee shop and
Right.
a bakery and an office building there.
Right.
You truly want the whole building to be residential.
Right.
Okay.
Or a coffee shop on the top 24th floor.
You said farm.
Just because you require it doesn't make necessarily make it successful.
Right.
Yeah,
It's just high density,
just, it was multi-family, but it wasn't high-rise specific.
what's their height? Sorry, I had that down today. Because they're developing that deal that's similar to Bayside, it's smaller footprint, but it's right there on the lake.
Which town?
Flower
No.
Yes, yeah, Flower Run didn't have, multi-family. They have multi-family, but they didn't have high-rise specific.
They're probably going through a PD as well. Yeah, I think everyone outside of Dallas, Irving,
Maximum acreage, 3 stories.
Arlington, and probably
So-
Fort Worth are gonna probably not have this zoning district.
Arlington might be a good one to look at because they have the entertainment districts.
Right. So we added that one to the list. All right, so we've been talking about it. Let's get into it. This non-residential zoning districts. So what I'm gonna show you, we're not gonna go into a deep dive on this, but what I thought would be good as a starting point is, let's fragment the city now into quadrants, if you will. And as a baseline, let's start looking at some of the non-residential zones. So all that you'll see here that's colored are gonna primarily be these districts. We do, as you all know, we have some PDs that were done because of the lack of creativity or the over creativity of developers. And how they wanted to color outside the lines, and so to do so, they requested to have plan development to get their non-residential development done. Right? And so what you're gonna see next are a group of slides that kind of break the city into quadrants and looking at the specific non-residential areas. Pay attention, obviously, if you can, along our major thoroughfares. But this gives you a snapshot, you know, also, we haven't talked much about the resiliency of the city, right? I mean, someone said it earlier jokingly, but we are overwhelmingly zoned residential. With additional development projects coming, as we go through this exercise, I want to encourage everyone to think through the legacy of the city and making sure that this city is sustainable 10, 15, 20, 30 years. I say that because I've worked for cities where we've had what we call retail village, right? So you have a great commercial base, but you have limited commercial activity, retail opportunities. And so as opposed to our residents spending money in the city, they're spending that money outside the city, and we're not the benefactors of the sales tax. So this is a good opportunity to kind of look at where are some of these commercial corridors, where are some of these industrial corridors, and are we, as we go through this zoning exercise, thinking through strategically how we're going to service this next generation of Rowlett residents. current generation, obviously, but this whole next set of generation of residents as we, look toward, this increasing population, slow, it's gradual, but making sure that we can meet everyone's needs in the city. So in quadrant one, we kind of bifurcated based upon the location of the lane. So everything east of the toll road and just south of 66, is that? Yeah. North of 66, yeah. And, again, 66 has the majority of these non-residential zoning districts. But then there are a couple of pockets where there are some other activities. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but
So it looks like the most of it is C2,
correct.
C3, C1,
Right.
or a PD.
Or this form-based code, urban village is one of them, and we have maybe a little bit of mixed-use waterfront. This area. I think that's what this one is.
But that
Well,
light
but
purple
every
is on
finger should be the hospital.
Yes, exactly. And
Um,
then there's a residential development across the street.
Right.
I'm not mistaken.
Our water.
Hey Derek,
Yes,
just wanted to make you aware of time.
yes, thank you.
Is there let me stop for a second. Is there a time issue tonight? There's no P and Z meeting.
Oh, well, I have a deadline, so. I promised these guys 6:15, they're gonna be working till midnight on this kind of stuff.
Well, we can treat this as just kind of a general introduction to the
Yeah,
non-residential.
yeah, because to be honest with you, it's hard to see.
It's hard to see. It's okay. It's okay. One of the things that I wanted to do though is you can at least see kind of the predominance of residential versus the limited amount of non-residential zoning districts, right? So let's look at quadrant 2. So this is gonna look familiar. Mr. Pollard, this is your North Shore part right here, I believe. Yeah. North
Yes.
Shore.
Yeah.
Yep.
The catalyst is already there.
Correct. Some of it is already built out, so this area is built, right? We have some spec builds there, potentially some tenants going in there, and then we have some developments that we're going through the entitlement process on the west side.
What's that zone that's on the west side? What's this?
So this is form-based. Help me out, staff. CC.
Commercial center,
Thank you.
which is
Commercial center.
your heaviest use of commercial retail.
Yep.
Along the highway.
Commercial retail.
Commercial center.
Commercial center.
Provide campus, office, multi-tenant flex space, large retail outfits compatible and suitable with adjacent land uses. Parking is largely provided by off-street parking lots.
Think firewheel.
So this is
Flex space, I've heard.
This is urban village, everything else is commercial center. So there is a different zoning designation here. And then this is kind of light industrial on the east side.
How many acres is that? Do you have any idea?
Oh. Yeah, it's pretty big.
It looks pretty big.
Yeah, well, it is.
Okay.
It is. I mean, these are, you're looking at,
Yeah.
just on this side, over 1 million square feet
Right.
of light industrial space.
The whole North Shore district was anywhere from 750 to 900 acres, and some of that falls in floodplain.
There's multifamily in there, right?
Correct. So you would probably see that in the urban village designation here, closest to the freeway. Again, just a glimpse at what we have. You see our main thoroughfare here, Lakeview, right? And we see your traditional C2 zoning district. And then a little bit of C1. We know kind of where we are. There are some industrial uses that have historically been here. So those currently exist east and west of Rowlett Road. south of 66.
Merritt Village is a multi-family entity that lies within the purple somewhere.
This area?
Yes, sir. That's the one I was telling you about, this JPI.
Oh,
Okay, this
yes.
FBCC is approximately 770 acres, mostly undeveloped and containing the North Shore area. So that dark purple, that's from Lone Bay,
Yeah.
and what?
So it's all green space right now, but we're processing entitlements on that. And then to the point you made, JPI's development is moving dirt right now, I believe. Doing something right in the urban village designation.
It's way north of there though, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's a much larger, that's a much water tower, that's way up there.
It's the orange.
It should be about the orange right on the edge.
That's the orange.
Across the street, no,
No,
up,
keep
to the left, to the
Yeah,
left.
there you go. Almost.
Here.
On your
Further
toes.
left, a little further left.
Is the-
South America.
I'm a little height challenged, so.
There you go,
Right. Ah, Merritt. Merritt. I see that. Well, it's Merritt all the way, right?
Yeah.
Sterile period goes this way.
Keep going, keep going.
I got it.
You left
This-
us back up one step.
This area,
I'm sorry, I have to do a lot of roads tonight, so.
this area right in here,
Yeah,
that is part of North Shore.
okay.
It's just because of the zoning that was laid out, that may be new neighborhood and some others that's up in there, but that is part of North Shore.
So we'll have to see about capturing that on our next zoning review. Let's look at quadrant 3. So this is south of primarily 66, all the way down, primarily residential toward the lake, and then some additional industrial development, is that? M1 and M2. Yes, like. And then across.
C1, 93, 400.
West.
Quadrant 3?
Yeah, we don't think of how much that is, that's
Where we are.
Go back and the North Shore, that's the most
Yeah.
Primarily residential, a little bit of industrial, a little bit of C1, C2.
And then goes down.
Yeah, anything else.
And then
So that's all it is.
the last quadrant, quadrant 4. So our Bayside, Sapphire Bay, Del Rock. There are a couple of areas of commercial development that we know of here. Some institutional development, very good point, someone had mentioned. So we have some, that blue dot there is either a school or a church. And then 66. That's outfitted with different types of commercial developments. So I thought this would be helpful because as we are looking at these non-residential zoning districts, if there's some areas where we think, particularly as we're reimagining some zoning, and thinking about the needs of our community, you know, how can we best think through what some of these zoning districts are gonna be and how flexible can we be? I mean, we've been rigid in the past, but is there some level of flexibility? And thanks to our GIS department, we were able to get these produced last week. So in addition,
Can we get the
Yes.
spirit of the 4 slides so we can review these? I mean, it's kind of hard for me to see.
Yes,
back.
yes, absolutely. So I was gonna say, in addition to doing this additional research on these cities for high rise, we'll have these slides attached where you can see it a little bit clearer. And then we'll begin to submit to you, very similar to what we did for residential, this breakdown. One of the things that we're gonna do though, as we do this as a staff, we're gonna make sure we look through and also be comfortable before we present it to you. And then have that comparison chart This is what form-based code says, this is what Rowlett Development Code says, here's kind of where we meet in the middle, so to speak.
So as y'all do that exercise, do you think staff is going to propose an overlay district that encompasses 66?
Sounds like he was listening to our conversation. So that is actually one of the things we're gonna do. And in fact, in the Rowlett Development Code, we do have an overlay district for Lakeview Parkway, and we do have an industrial overlay district.
It just is important because
Yes.
it's bordered by existing single-family residential. So you don't want to put in these broad,
Right.
here's your commercial zoning. And now if it redevelops, it could be something completely different than what it is.
Exactly.
So it allows you to put some standards and rails on.
Right. So I was just looking at the industrial zoning overlay district, specific to the areas that are south of Lakeview Parkway. And it talks about how there are limitations within the first 150 feet. Right? But to your point, it's important as part of this zoning process, we also identify our zoning districts. So we will have a overlay district for downtown strategic plan, right? We have a plan that we're actively trying to implement. We need to make sure that we have, and one way to look at overlay districts, there are an additional layer of protection in terms of trying to achieve and get what you want for a specific area, right? And they oftentimes have their own type of intent and development standards. So it's like double reinforcement to protect, the vision of what we have bought into. And then we'll probably have an overlay district for Bayside. They're through kind of PD/ there are also form-based code locations and so on. Just kind of recognizing the uniqueness of those particular areas in the city. So good. Anything else we need to provide? We can get all this over to you. We apologize for it. There will be a series of attachments. So staff, you might send it in maybe two tranches so you don't have just one big email and your email rejects it because it's too large.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I said,
So
Is that what you were pointing at before?
No.
I like it, Tim.
No, but that's fine. So motion on the floor to adjourn, second. All those in favor say aye. Okay. We're adjourned.